My execution looms at daybreak. It's only proper that I pass this last evening in precisely this fashion, quill gripped tightly, unburdening my soul with confessions. Honesty after 10 millennia of deception. The burden of it overwhelms even my augmented frame. Every phrase inflicts greater torment than ripping an appendage from its socket. Yet I must continue. Let these words resound. To anyone who uncovers this account, I am Atheon, formerly shield captain among the Adeptus Custodes, guardian of the Emperor's hidden truths, reduced now to betrayer, blasphemer, bearer of forbidden knowledge. The golden throne has eternally droned with a persistent low-frequency thrum that echoes across the adamantium decks of the inner palace. We custodians adapted to it across ages of duty. We dismissed it as the machine spirit's whisper, the wondrous device upholding our sovereign's eternal shell. How neatly these self-soothing falsehoods allow us to endure what might otherwise shatter our resolve. For 10,000 years I maintained my watch. My auramite plate has lost its luster, no matter the rigorous daily buffs. My form, fortified far beyond human frailty by the Emperor's genius, now shows signs of decay. Time creeps upon even us custodians, though it advances with glacial slowness. Vision fades first, then clarity of thought. Numerous comrades opt for the dignified exit when their alertness wanes. They relinquish their plate, don the shadowed robes of the Emperor's gaze, and depart for the broader Imperium to act as unseen sentinels. I lingered on, perhaps out of obstinacy, or mere dread of the unknown realms outside these enclosures that had defined my existence for eons. Exile would have been the wiser choice. 3 weeks passed by imperial reckoning. I oversaw the nocturnal review of the Sanctum Imperialis. This ceremony unfolds flawlessly, each full cycle of 24 hours, ever since the Emperor's entombment. 4 fellow custodians flanked me, their sentinel spears thrumming with latent power. The colossal portals to the throne chamber parted via pistons rivaling Titan's scale. The air hung heavy with incense you could almost masticate. Servo skulls flitted amid the fog, their droning litanies blending with the incantations of the tech priests tending the golden throne. The proceedings felt routine, a soothing constancy amid the flux. We advanced to the dais where humanity's lord remained enthroned, his shrunken remains propped by relics from the dark age of technology, his skeletal visage locked in eternal torment. I'd beheld this spectacle innumerable times before. But on that evening, a shift occurred. A single bead, nothing more. Initially, I chalked it up to moisture, maybe lubricant from the myriad gears fueling the throne's life-preserving wonder. Yet, when it gleamed under the illumination, its essence revealed itself. Blood, not the parched relic sort that had crumbled to powder in the Emperor's withered arteries long ago. Fresh essence, bearing that signature aureate tint of our primogenitor's lifeblood. I kept silent with my kin. Rather, I committed the spot to memory. Sector 8, Node 27B, along the throne's expansive substructure. Once the check concluded, I withdrew to my chambers in the custodian quarters. Rest evaded me. That crimson droplet infested my mind like a plague. Such a thing defied all reason. The Emperor hadn't spilled ichor in 10,000 years, not since the climactic clash against the arch-traitor Horus. The next evening, I ventured back solo, invoking access protocols held by scant few among the custodes. The Mechanicus adepts raised no objections to my arrival. No one challenges a custodian deep within the imperial palace's core. I scrutinized the throne's underbelly, zeroing in on the exact site of that improbable speck. No remnants lingered, yet the vibration had altered, subtle to all save those attuned over countless years. The tone had sharpened, its rhythm faltering like a heartbeat battling irregularity. I pressed my uncovered palm to the gilded exterior, the act feeling profane. Even then, the alloy seared, not merely tepid, but scorching with an internal blaze that the venting arrays ought to have quelled. And under my touch, I sensed it, a throb. In that instant, protocol demanded I alert the Captain General. I ought to have triggered the alert, summoning the custodes' collective scrutiny upon this aberration. That was my oath-bound role, the very reason for my being. Curiosity supplanted 10 millennia of drilled obedience, though. I trace the rhythm downward. Scant souls know of the labyrinthine depths below the golden throne. Those primordial conduits hark back to the Unification Wars when the Emperor first claimed dominion over Terra. Even fewer hold the privilege to traverse them. As shield captain of the Hegemon Guard, I numbered among that elite. The passages squeezed tight, predating the Custode's forging. I had to shed my armor incrementally, golden segment by segment, stashing it in the utility recesses lining the route. Dressed solely in my undergarments, I felt exposed, defenseless, as I hadn't since my elevation to the custodian ranks. The palace's mass bore down overhead. Billions of tons of housed within unyielding vaults of marble and adamantium lay countless billions of souls, oblivious to my forbidden act. The atmosphere thinned as I plunged deeper. The venerable air circulation network fought valiantly against decay. At depth 50, the weeping inscriptions started to manifest, incised into the barriers in tongues drawn from prohibited repositories. LR runes, necronier glyphs, emblems of vanished human societies, and bizarre contours that pained the sight to behold. They were engraved with exactitude into the alloy surfaces, every stroke impeccably rendered, and from their forms leaked that identical aureate essence I'd observed on the throne. I possess no psychic gifts. The Emperor's alterations to our genetic blueprint rendered us impervious to the warp's influence, realizing his grand design for humankind. Still, I sensed the potency radiating from those markings, a force pressing upon my psyche, akin to the weight at the ocean's deepest chasm. My pulse thundered in my ears with each further drop. At level 66, a portal confronted me. Not the grand gateways of the upper citadel, sculpted with depictions of imperial victories. This one was starkly archaic and functional, a panel of somber alloy that devoured illumination instead of mirroring it. No grips or latches marked its face, no obvious access method. But upon nearing, it acknowledged my presence. Or more precisely, it detected my essence. Custodian biological signatures activated long-dormant apparatuses, untouched for thousands of years. Accompanied by a hush of balancing atmosphere, the panel retracted laterally into the bulkhead. The space ahead challenged all reason. It extended boundlessly, vastly exceeding the mountain's structural limits. The vaulted roof ascended scores of meters into obscurity, veiled in gloom, even amid the ethereal glow from hovering orbs of icy flame. The ground wasn't alloy or rock, but an impeccable reflector, duplicating the overhead scene with utter fidelity. And in the midst lay a vertical coffin, towering over any space marine in stature, crafted from the identical lustrous substance as the portal. Nothing disrupted its immaculate exterior, except one emblem at its core. The very insignia gracing the Emperor's personal banner, the thunderbolt flanked by pinions. Yet here, the pinions weren't the imperial Aquila's noble span. They resembled taut hides, like those of Terra's bats or fiends. I advanced cautiously, my footfalls resounding through the immense void. The breeze carried scents of ionized air and metallic tang. The fine hairs on my limbs bristled, energy untethered and feral. Not the clinical force of the throne's machinery, but a vitality that hungered, that breathed. The coffin bore no evident joints or pivots. Nevertheless, as I positioned myself in front of it, a streak of golden luminescence traced its midline. The fissure expanded, exposing oblivion inside. No mere shadow. An abyss that swallowed photons pulsating with inverted glow. From that rift issued a timbre, not as acoustic waves that mortals perceive, but as an intimate link to my consciousness, a timbre known solely from nocturnal visions and archival echoes. His timbre, Atheon, it pronounced, uttering my name as both desecration and grace. I dropped to my knees. Salty trails flowed freely across my cheeks. A decade of millennia's devotion and service crumbled beneath that timbre's burden. The Emperor vital, aware, addressing me. Ascend, the timbre urged, and I complied, as my forging intended. The fissure broadened more. Aureate brilliance poured out, searing in its brilliance. I guarded my sight with my forearm, peering through narrowed lids against the blaze. As my eyes acclimated, I confronted him. Not the desiccated form on the golden seat, nor the idealized deity from hollow frescoes. The entity before me surpassed and fell short of such portrayals in equal measure. One side gleamed with the accustomed luster of mankind's sovereign, idealized in form, formidable past mortal grasp. The visage I'd pledged my existence to, etched in pristine clarity. But the opposing side, contorted tendons and bared fibers, osseous structures that writhed and morphed like mercury, an orb that wasn't ocular, but a portal to an unfathomable realm where hues possessed form and noises evoked flavor. The tissue throbbed with inner luminescence, cycling through wavelengths beyond human endurance. Half divinity, half monstrosity, the emperor's authentic guise. Yukaku. Quote. The entity declared, its timbre now carrying through the air, vibrating from both the impeccable lips and the churning chaos of its counterpart. The initial of my heirs to confront this reality in 10,000 cycles. I yearned to turn aside. Every fiber urged denial, repudiation of the spectacle. Yet denial eluded me. The identical pull that had lured me into this prescribed depth now anchored my stare. My sovereign, I barely murmured, my words frail and quivering in the electrified ambiance. How can this be? You occupy the seat overhead. The Mechanicus ministers to your corporeal husk. The Astronomicon flares with your mental vigor. The entity's flawless aspect curved into a grin, a motion so mundane it bordered on sacrilege amid that bifurcated visage. The remains above serve merely as a husk, it explained. A conduit for the humanity's belief, a guiding light through which I direct my intent, yet never my authentic essence. Absolutely not. It emerged fully from the sarcophagus. Gilded ichor trickled from the fissure dividing its sections, hissing upon contact with the reflective surface below. Ever since the moment my offspring felled me, I've lingered in this condition. The entity pressed on, poised at the boundary of domains, belonging wholly to neither the physical realm nor the psychic void, an emerging deity, a creature in flux. With every utterance, my rationality unraveled further. The bedrock of my being, the mission I'd devoted 10,000 years to upholding, disintegrated around me. The realm revered the sovereign as divine. Yet what sort of deity was this? What sacred force could appear as such a fractured abomination? The seat does not preserve me, the entity declared, addressing my silent inquiry. I preserve the seat. Solely my determination repels the chaotic surges of the warp from engulfing all in dread. My fragmented core upholds the psychic beacon that steers mankind across the cosmos. Yet always with a toll, Atheon, forever with a toll. It indicated its tainted portion, the malformed cluster of half-demonic tissue. This represents the burden of divinity. To govern the physical plane, I must dwell partly in the psychic one. To lead mankind, I must comprehend their perils. To combat the corrupting influences, I must embody aspects of their nature. I regained my speech, though it came out as a faint murmur. So the imperial doctrine proved false. Deities do exist. The entity's flawless side furrowed in displeasure as its blemished side contorted in something akin to mockery. The reality was essential. It explained, if mankind had turned to worship amid our conquests, they would have nourished the warped beings, empowering them past any restraint. The doctrine served as an antidote to the plague of devotion, but antidotes harbor a diluted strain of the affliction. It advanced nearer. I sensed the warmth emanating from its pristine aspect, the chilling void issuing from its warped aspect. Dual conflicting energies equilibrated within one inconceivable form. And now it went on. The realm adores me as a deity. Their devotion bolsters me, upholds this bifurcated state, the profound paradox of my war on superstition. I transformed into precisely what I aimed to eradicate. Inquiries scorched my thoughts, far too many and too horrifying to voice. Yet when surged to the forefront, insisting on expression. Why reveal this to me, I demanded. Why after 10 millennia? The entity's pristine side curved into a smile once more. Its marred side throbbed with mutable hues that pained the eyes to behold, for the equilibrium is collapsing. Atheon, the auric fluid infiltrates, the divisions erode. Before long, the presence atop the throne and the one confronting you must merge anew. and upon that union dread shall grasp the revelation you now carry." "And what revelation is that, my sovereign?" I inquired, dreading the response more than any demise I'd ever contemplated. Both aspects intoned together, the serene tone merging with the babbling multitude in a dissonant accord, that to rescue mankind I needed to evolve into its ultimate adversary. That the boundary separating divinity from demony is finer than a sword's keenest edge. That devotion endures not from inherent verity, but because the faithful render it so. The entity lifted its limbs, one flawless and radiant, the other contorted and unfathomable. The warp reflects the depths of mankind's psyche, Atheon, and I've peered into that reflection longer than any entity ought. What gazes back defies both the deity your realm venerates and the rational guide I once feigned to be. It embodies novelty, a force in formation. My limbs buckled under me. I tumbled onto the glassy floor, my image revealing a visage scarcely my own, withered past its prime, gaze stretched wide with insight no mortal psyche was designed to endure. "What task do you assign this insight?" I questioned, my tone fracturing. "How shall I fulfill my duty bearing such awareness?" The entity observed me through its immaculate orb and its churning abyss of absence. "That," it replied, "falls to your judgment. The initial genuine decision afforded any guardian since your forging. You could ascend to the world above and proclaim your encounter. You could terminate here, consigning this reality to nothingness, or you might align with me in the vast transformation." It reached out both extremities toward me. A proposition, an ordeal, a curse. Ponder deeply, my child. For any route you select, the realm you recognize cannot endure the impending storm. At those final words, the entity withdrew into the sarcophagus. The rift of luminous gold constricted, then closed completely, abandoning me solitary in the surreal vault with a dilemma beyond mortal capacity. I lingered there for hours, maybe days. Chronology lost relevance in that space, unbound by existence's rigid hold. When finally I stood, my resolve solidified. I would climb back to the surface, not to incite panic or disseminate blasphemy, but to document my vision, to inscribe legacy for any who might pursue amid the forthcoming shift. The climb upward dragged on far beyond the plunge downward. Each step dragged more than the one before. When I finally arrived at the heap of my abandoned armor, my soul felt ancient, even if my body did not. I fastened the gilded plates onto myself like a machine, every segment weighing like an obligation instead of an honor. The press of responsibility had never borne down so relentlessly. Back on the surface floors, I learned that just one evening had elapsed in the realm overhead. No one had marked my disappearance. The palace's daily rhythms flowed on without pause. Chants echoed through the halls, fragrant smoke curled upward. The sovereign was revered as the divine entity he had evolved into. Yet, lurking under the devotion, the ceremonies, and the frantic optimism, a foul reality throbbed like a diseased organ. For 3 weeks I carried out my obligations. I oversaw reviews. I kept watch. I enacted the part assigned to me across 10,000 years. Meanwhile, the secret gnawed at my core. The flawless visage paired with the mangled abomination, the fractured ruler, the deity who wasn't divine but an even odder presence. That day, I shattered amid the twilight review as we faced the shriveled remains on the aureate seat. There it was, the decay advancing across a sliver of the sovereign's bare flesh, peeking from under the vital machinery, rippling like mercury, glowing from within. The change was underway. I voiced it aloud, revealing to my fellow guardians the sight from the depths, the doom awaiting humankind once equilibrium collapsed. Their expressions stayed rigid as granite, impassive, skeptical. Then the overseer commander issued the command. They grabbed me, took my arms away, accused me of the gravest blasphemy. The chief warden declared my punishment himself, execution. Now I linger in this cramped chamber, tinier than the tomb cradling the ruler's actual shape, pen gripped tight, admission spilling across the page that may ignite unseen by anyone but my killers. Though, if my slayers peruse it, so be it. Still, I commit it to ink. I testify. I proclaim the reality, consequences be cursed. The sovereign isn't the figure humankind imagines, no mere cadaver, no divinity, no mortal authority revived. He's morphing into another entity, one that bridges dimensions, and once his shift finishes, the realm will confront its ultimate trial. Belief clashing with fact, optimism versus existence, the divine horror once humanity's lord against the terror he himself forged. Daybreak nears. I detect the footfalls of my comrades beyond the bars. They approach, resplendent in their zeal, sightless in their devotion. I hold no grudge. I was once like them, but I've glimpsed the ruler's authentic countenances, both, and the vision endures. I am Atheon, former protector captain of the Emperor's elite wardens, custodian of his hidden truths, deemed betrayer, blasphemer, revealer now, and these mark my last declarations. The aureate seat weeps blood, the divine horror awakens, the realm crumbles. Time warps strangely in the vaults under the sovereign's fortress. It might have been days since I scrawled that account, or only moments. My slayers haven't arrived. The sunrise I dreaded lingers withheld. Instead, my enclosure's gates swung wide to show the chief warden in person, Trajanorus. His splendid plating shone faintly in the gloom, his watch spear clutched not for battle but as a symbol of command. "Stand, Protector Captain Atheon," he intoned, his tone revealing no hint of his mind. "Your demise has been deferred." I rose on limbs frail from isolation and insight. Has my blasphemy found mercy? He stayed stoic, his features as veiled as his ritual headpiece. "The oversight leaders have gathered. Your statements have sparked inquiries. You'll address them prior to your penalty's enforcement, not absolved then, just held back. The elite wardens prize honesty, even if it stings. I ought to have foreseen as much. Valorous guided me himself along passages I'd traversed for ages, now viewed afresh. The splendor of the sovereign citadel, crafted to hoist humankind to its zenith, rang empty now, a facade of arrogance built on deception. The gilded raptors and valiant sculptures, the vaulting spans and eternal triumphs. Every bit a sales pitch for an order, rooted in deliberate blindness. We moved past units of sentinel troops who averted their gazes from me, not from scorn or revulsion, but from the irrational dread that dissent could spread just by looking. Only Valorous appeared untouched by such qualms. Yet he had lingered nearest the sovereign for ages. Maybe he harbored his own suspicions of what I'd uncovered. The hall of precise judgment formed a flawless ring hewn from one enormous slab of ancient Terran stone from the Unity conflicts. The 12 oversight leaders occupied seats in a tighter ring at the heart. No vast arena, no spectators. Elite warden reckoning stays intimate. Our disgrace belongs to us alone. I faced them bare of protection, clad in a plain garment. They stayed sheathed in their complete array of battle gear, as though bracing for assault from a lone defenseless soul. Or maybe they dreaded the revelations I could utter. Shield Captain Atheon, the highest-ranking tribune, initiated the proceedings, his words boosted through the Vox system of his helmet. "You face charges of heresy against the Emperor of mankind. You assert that you beheld a vision of our Lord within the palace's lower depths. You maintain that this vision disclosed revelations clashing with 10 millennia of imperial creed. Declare yourself now. Describe completely what you profess to have observed." And so I complied, sharing every aspect, every utterance passed between me and the fractured emperor. I concealed nothing. With my demise inevitable, honesty would mark my last devotion. The tribunes absorbed my account without a sound, motionless and inscrutable beneath their elaborate helmets. Upon conclusion, the hall stayed hushed for several drawn-out moments. Then the lead tribune addressed me once more. "You are not the initial one, Shield Captain." Those 5 syllables dismantled the remnants of my comprehension, not the pioneer, nor the sole observer of the Emperor's split essence. My knees threatened to buckle under me. Quote 5. I uttered with effort. The tribune's helmet shifted faintly toward Valorous, who offered a barely noticeable inclination of approval. Authorization provided. Every 1,000 years since the Emperor's entombment on the Golden Throne, a custodian has been compelled to the lower levels, invariably a figure of elevated status, invariably one devoted flawlessly, invariably one displaying the initial traces of senescence, and invariably they emerge altered. I regained my composure. The predecessors, what fate awaited them? Some opted for reticence, resuming their roles until mortality overtook them fully. Others selected banishment, aligning with the emperor's eyes and dissolving into the broader imperium. A handful embraced oblivion, impaling themselves on their own guardian spears to evade the weight of their discoveries. Another tribune inclined nearer and added, "Et quod aedur." Those received an ultimate task. I grasped then that the delay in my sentencing stemmed not from compassion. It signified relocation. Valorous advanced, his guardian spear impacting the marble surface with a resonance akin to verdict. Quote 9. Quote 10, I stated, scanning from one tribune to the next. Quote 11. Quote 12, the lead tribune declared. Quote 13. Stated so directly, the response rang clear. Despite my revelations, the Imperium of Man endured as the paramount defense against annihilation, against Xenos' incursions and Chaos's taint. If safeguarding that bulwark demanded venerating an entity suspended between divinity and ruin, did that cost not merit the exchange? What path do you expect of me? I inquired, mirroring the query I had directed at the Emperor's bifurcated presence. Valorous neared, extending a data slate. Quote 15. I accepted the slate, its mass trivial beside the load of wisdom I bore. Quote 16. Quote 17, the lead tribune intoned. Quote 18. I nearly chuckled. From denounced apostate to authorized evangelist within a single hour, the paradox did not escape me. Quote 19. I ventured despite foreknowing the reply. Quote 20. Valorous replied, plainly. Quote 21. I glanced at the data slate clutched in my grasp. It revealed a lone depiction, a vessel, lithe and compact, designed for concealment over combat. The whisper of truth. As per the label below my potential conveyance, should I embrace this charge? Quote 22. I questioned. Quote 23. The lead tribune responded. Quote 24, keep it hidden, allies will spot it where it counts. Quote 25, I'm prepared, I declared, fastening the mangled aquila inside my cloak near my chest, an appropriate spot for such a weighty emblem. Valorous guided me along rarely traversed passageways, steering clear of the palace's primary avenues where my movement could draw attention. We arrived at a compact docking pad, one among countless that speckled the vast structure. The whisper of truth lay in wait, its exterior a dull ebony that devoured illumination instead of mirroring it. No emblems of the Imperium defaced its skin, no symbols of loyalty or intent, just a silhouette made manifest. A cloaked individual lingered by the entry ramp, visage hidden beneath a shadowed cowl. As we drew nearer, the figure raised its head, unveiling traits I knew well, unchanged despite the ages since our last encounter. Tribune Dionysian, I uttered, surprise creeping into my tone despite my efforts. Records stated you perished in the Third Black Crusade. The veteran guardian's countenance etched with years exceeding even our species' norms, yet his gaze stayed keen, as piercing as when he had flanked the Emperor amid the war of the beast. I did vanish, Shield Captain Atheon, he replied, his words a rasped murmur, vanished from the custode's ranks, but discovered for a higher calling. Quote 30. As you stand now. Quote 31. You were aware. Quote 32. I had my suspicions. Quote 33. We have plenty to cover, Atheon. The gathering on Titan beckons and our window narrows. The Emperor's shift hastens. What spanned eras now unfolds in mere generations. Before long, it will span years, then mere seasons. The realization hit me like a lightning strike. How much longer, I inquired. Until the end? No longer than 100 years. After 10,000 years of equilibrium, the balance swings ever harder toward change. What you beheld in the underlayers appears with rising frequency directly on the throne. The Mechanicus notes irregularities beyond their grasp. The Sisters of Silence report upheavals in the null zone. The portents accumulate. Valorous rested a palm on my shoulder, a brotherly touch extended one final time. Depart with resolve, bearer of truth. Clear the path, for in the Emperor's evolution rests either mankind's redemption or its doom, and not even we, who have caught sight of his twofold essence, can foresee the outcome. I gripped his arm in the traditional warrior's clasp, our last tie to the order I had upheld across millennia. Quote 39. Quote 40. He affirmed, reciting the timeless custodian vow. With that, I pivoted and trailed Dionysian into the whisper of truth. The ramp sealed after us, hissing with mechanical finality. From a porthole, I observed Valoris shrinking as the craft rose from the pad and veered into the darkened heavens. Terra, the seat of power. My residence for 10 millennia now receding below, its absence stung like a bodily wound, a parting deeper than the loss of flesh or vital part, yet woven into that ache came an unforeseen sensation, liberation. The strain of feigned devotion released, the weariness of upholding illusion at last discarded. Dionysian ushered me to the vessel's simple bridge, where 3 additional shrouded forms awaited. Their visages showed the clear marks of extreme longevity, the gradual decay afflicting even the engineered perfection of Custodes' physiology. All donned identical plain garments, and on their torsos, glimpsed only in fleeting motions, shone the warped aquila of the truth-bearers. Brothers, Dionysian proclaimed to them, behold Atheon, formerly shield captain of the Heteron Guard, now the 10th in our line. They studied me, with stares, burdened by endless sights, evaluating, scrutinizing, deciding if I truly possessed the fortitude for the load I had embraced. He has beheld the Emperor's split essence, queried one, his dialect revealing antiquity beyond custodian norms. The outdated Terran inflections from the Unification Wars lingered in his voice. He has borne witness, Dionysian affirmed, and like the 9 who preceded, he has embraced reality over soothing deceptions. The elder inclined his head, apparently content. Then our number is whole. The pattern renews. Pattern? That term echoed once more. Clarify, I pressed, my tolerance for vague declarations fraying after the trials I had weathered. Dionysian indicated a seat at the gleaming round table anchored the heart of the command chamber. The rest of the truth-bearers assembled around it, their circle etched with lined countenances and timeless insight. The Emperor's vision extended far beyond his entombment on the golden throne, Dionysian remarked. Though split across the material realm and the warp, he anticipated the events that would unfold afterward. Forging the truth-bearers formed part of his blueprint, not something we devised. It served as a safeguard for the era when devotion by itself could no longer uphold the Imperium. One among them, a female figure with cybernetic enhancements framing her gaze, picked up the thread. Quote 49. Quote 50. I replied, realization breaking through. Yet what makes that milestone matter? Why does the sequence culminate in my experience? The elder custodian bent closer, his gnarled fingers interlocked in front of him. Quote 51. A chill gripped me, even amid the vessel's controlled climate. And precisely what form does this profound shift take? What does the Emperor turn into once his metamorphosis finishes? The quartet of truth-bearers shared looks, a wordless exchange forged from mutual weight. We can't say for sure, Dionysian conceded. All of us have glimpsed the Emperor's split existence, yet no one has grasped a definitive vision of the outcome. Our ideas stem from inferences drawn from trends spanning ages. In truth, this metamorphosis might stand alone in the annals of the galaxy. A mortal ascending to godlike status while integrating the warp's essence without yielding to its taint. The Primarchs represented his initial experiments, the woman added. Entities bridging the physical and the ethereal, yet they revealed flaws. Half fell to the ruinous powers. The remaining ones fell short of his grand ambition. Which was, I prompted. At an elevation, Dionysian stated plainly. The Emperor pursued an unprecedented feat for humanity, divinity unmarred by decay, a rise through the warp that retained mortal intent and viewpoint, the pinnacle of human advancement manifested in its architect. I thought back to the bifurcated visage I'd encountered, one side glowing with flawless splendor, the other a seething nightmare. Quote 59. The elder custodian denied it with a shake of his head. Quote 60. So. Quote 61. I urged. Quote 62. Quote 63. Dionysian intoned somberly. Quote 64. The vessel trembled faintly as it plunged into the warp, the tangible world yielding to the churning chaos of the immaterial. An apt echo of my shift from the unyielding routines of custodial service to the shifting enigmas of truth-bearing. Quote 65. I interjected, pivoting the discussion. Quote 66. Quote 67. The woman responded. Quote 68. I queried, taken aback that such secrets reached further than our circle. Quote 69. Dionysian specified. Quote 70. Quote 71. I wondered. The four truth-bearers traded glances once more. Quote 72. The elder custodian noted. Quote 33. I inclined my head, heeding the sagacity in his counsel. I'd glimpsed only a fleeting phase of the emperor's evolution. These truth-bearers, in unison, had tracked its advance across countless years. Quote 74. Dionysian continued, shifting to logistics. Quote 75. Imperial functionaries who wield significant sway over governance, and even chosen representatives from the Adeptus Mechanicus, whose technical knowledge could be essential amid the shift. How can I spot such people? I inquired. The lady grinned, an odd sight on features, etched deep by years. Just as Dionysian spotted you, Atheon. You watch closely, you probe. You offer minor facts and measure the responses. Individuals who react with careful reflection instead of knee-jerk rejection or unquestioning agreement, these are the prospects deserving deeper scrutiny. Once pinpointed, you disclose only the essentials at the precise moment they're required, Dionysian added. Some might just need a gentle push to doubt established creeds. Others could handle bolder disclosures right away. The key figures will get to examine the proofs up close, although only the custodians have ever beheld the emperor's twin aspects in person. The vessel's lights softened, signaling the onset of the nocturnal phase. Our discussion tapered off organically, leaving the five of us in reflective quietude. Following all that disclosure, I appreciated the hush to absorb it all, to weave the knowledge I'd gained with my own first-hand encounters. Get some rest, Dionysian proposed, standing from his seat. We've got a few days navigating the warp en route to Titan. Plenty of opportunity for you to pore over the full records of the truth-bearers and draw your own insights. The rest stood too, heading to what I assumed were private cabins branching from the primary control hub. I stayed put, gazing at the contorted Aquila emblem I'd taken from my garment. Quote 76. I called out as Dionysian turned to depart. Quote 77. Dionysian halted at the threshold, his lined visage pensive. I think, Atheon, that labels like human or divine no longer fit what the emperor is evolving into. He's crafting his own distinct essence, unparalleled across existence. If that singularity spells humanity's redemption or its ruin is yet unclear, and it might hinge on the deeds of truth-knowers. With those words, he departed, leaving me to my musings and the burden of my fresh role. The 10th bearer, the cycle's fulfillment, the precursor to profound alteration. Sleep evaded me through that dark period. My thoughts brimmed with consequences and potentials. When weariness at last overtook, my visions teemed with that bifurcated visage, the flawless aureate profile alongside the mutable dread. Yet now, in slumber, I perceived beyond. The split softening, the dual parts fusing into an emergent whole, neither wholly corporeal nor entirely ethereal, an entity in flux. I jolted awake, the dream visions dissolving, though the resonance endured, a perception of beholding evolution, not decay, elevation, not descent. Was this revelation or mere hope, reality or illusion? After 10,000 years of devoted duty, could I remain impartial regarding the emperor's metamorphosis? The voyage to Titan unfolded amid research and meditation. I delved into the assembled narratives of the prior 9 truth-bearers, tracing the Emperor's evolution through the ages. Initial records portrayed a figure more evidently mortal in its partitioned state, the radiant side more commanding, the spectral one vaguer. Over the eras, equilibrium tilted gradually. The ethereal traits sharpened, gained form, shifting from wild distortion to purposeful evolution. I conferred these findings with my truth-bearer companions, especially Dionysian, whose observation dated back over 3,000 years. His description matched the trend. The Emperor he had seen showed less schism, a subtler divide between physical and otherworldly elements. The trajectory was evident. What started as subtle seepage of ethereal forces into the Emperor's core had blossomed into the starkly partitioned entity I'd observed. And the culmination? I questioned Dionysian while we lingered on the viewing platform, observing the turbulent frenzy of the warp via reinforced barriers and consecrated panes. Should the trend persist, will the ethereal wholly overtake the physical? It's possible, he conceded, or maybe the corporeal and ethereal unit in fresh harmony, surpassing either alone to form a superior whole. The venerable Eldari attained divinity prior to their downfall. The ruinous powers embody another route to godlike status, tainted by the basest urges of minds. The Emperor might be pioneering a distinct course, born of human ingenuity. But what's the price? I voiced softly. The Imperium rests on faith in an immutable, flawless Emperor. A worldly ruler, deified by mankind's craving for belief, maybe, yet rooted in human essence and intent. What happens to that vast empire when belief clashes with the stark truth atop the golden seat? Dionysian's lined features stayed stoic and unmoved. That's the puzzle that's haunted the truth-bearers across 10,000 years, he replied, and it's why our mission gains even greater urgency as the change speeds up. The Imperium has to adapt in step with its ruler, or it'll crumble once the chrysalis bursts open at last. On the 7th day, we burst from the warp into the Saturn system. Titan hung massive ahead of us, its air a poisonous haze veiling the Grey Knight's fortress monastery. No space defenses rose to intercept our path. The murmur of truth was anticipated, its distinct mark known to the ancient safeguards installed eons ago just for this moment. We touched down in a remote hangar, distant from the central stronghold. No welcoming escort awaited, no official welcome. The Grey Knights prized discretion over pageantry. Only one figure in Terminator armor stood ready. His imposing aura set him apart from any regular warrior. Quote 78. Dionysian announced, dipping his head in quiet respect. Quote 79. The towering form studied me with gazes that had faced chaos's essence head-on and emerged untainted. Then the hour draws near, he intoned, his words echoing inside his helmet. The records stand ready. Come with me. We marched along passages hewn from Titan's core stone, inscribed with runes of exile and safeguarding. In stark contrast to the lavish splendor of the imperial palace, the Grey Knight's bastion was stark, verging on ascetic. Utility shaped every detail with ruthless precision. These fighters required no symbols of their duty or devotion. They were woven into their genetic core. The Librarium Obscura hid far inside the structure, sealed by adamantium portals carved with barriers against both bodily and mental trespass. Drago laid his armored palm on the ident panel, and the heavy portals parted inward with eerie quiet. The space inside upended all assumptions. I'd braced for shelves groaning under books and data slates, yet at the heart of the round chamber rose a lone plinth. Atop it sat an apparatus from old Chronicles, a Horus Heresy-era scryer cogitator built to link straight to the operator's thoughts, skipping any tactile means. The Codex Obscura, Drago clarified, nodding at the machine. Not mere writings, but a full immersion. The gathered visions of every truth-bearer, captured in their complete sensory and emotional depth. You'll weave your tale into the weave, Atheon, and in exchange, live through theirs. I neared the plinth warily. Tech for direct neural linking had mostly been forsaken since the heresy, judged too open to warp taint. That the Grey Knights still housed one underscored their trust in their psi shields and their zeal for keeping the Truthbearer's records raw and unaltered. Quote 84. I inquired, not from personal dread, but worry over what my thoughts might touch. Quote 85. Drago answered enigmatically. Quote 86. I glanced at Dionysian, who offered a steady nod of support. The fellow truth-bearers lingered near the threshold, watchers of this rite of inheritance. Drawing a steadying inhale, I rested my palms on the cogitator's sleek face. It hummed to life at once, coupling to my psyche via channels beyond sensing or defiance. The room dissolved, giving way to a churning maelstrom of recollections and feelings. I ceased to be solely myself, merging into a layered entity, reliving 9 prior visions all at once. I strode forgotten halls beside Constantine Valdor, the inaugural truth-bearer, just centuries past the Emperor's entombment. I sensed his jolt upon discovering not a complete god, but a figure in flux, holding fast to his mortal roots amid warp forces seeping into his being. Through Valdor's sight, I saw the Emperor still bearing a human cast, the taint, if it merited the name, confined to a subtle aureate radiance encircling him, a flicker of near reality that whispered of the shift ahead. I lingered with Dionysian some 3,000 years on, beholding an emperor more fractured. The mortal shell held sway, yet now coexisted with an alien presence, not warped, not disordered, but deliberately reshaped, adjusting to a life-bridging worlds. With each following bearer, I traced the advance, the physical frame slowly yielding ground to the warp side element, the split growing sharper, yet revealing an unforeseen pattern, the warp elements gaining form, more deliberate in their form, less chaotic in mutation, and a more intentional progression. Through the thoughts of each individual who had borne it before me, I didn't merely observe their visions, I delved into their deductions, their perspectives, their apprehensions, and their aspirations. Certain individuals regarded the metamorphosis as humankind's redemption, the sovereign evolving into the precise form required for survival amid a merciless cosmos. Others dreaded it as the pinnacle of decay, a gradual triumph of disorder achieved via insidious methods rather than outright domination. The majority withheld their verdicts, satisfied with monitoring and documenting, deferring any final assessments to those who would behold the metamorphosis's culmination. Hours or perhaps days elapsed, though temporal perception held no relevance inside the scryer cogitator's linkage. Upon my eventual return, breathless and bewildered, I discovered myself kneeling in front of the pedestal. The fellow truth-bearers and Drago observed me with faces blending worry and empathy. "Now you grasp it," Dionysian remarked, assisting me upright. "Not merely your personal observation, but the entire mosaic." I inclined my head, momentarily speechless. The ordeal had been staggering, extending beyond mere sensations to profound intellectual depths. To behold the Emperor's gradual alteration spanning 10,000 years. To trace the design from its origins to the present moment was to discern its direction in manners unattainable through isolated glimpses. Quote 89. I declared at last, regaining my composure. Quote 90. Drago affirmed with a nod inside his enormous helmet, a view held by the Grey Knights across millennia. Quote 91. Quote 992. I continued, the schema now vivid in my thoughts. Quote 99. Dionysian added. Quote 94. That lingered as the unresolved inquiry. Drago pivoted toward a concealed alcove and fetched a modest item swathed in golden fabric. Quote 95. He extended the item, remarkably compact considering its profound import. With fingers quivering faintly despite my custodian discipline, I unfolded the wrapping, exposing a data crystal, archaic device, its exterior inscribed with motifs from before the Imperium's founding. I knew them from annals of the Unification Wars, the Emperor's private code, employed prior to embracing the Imperial Aquila as his emblem. Quote 96, Drago stated. Quote 97, quote 98. I objected. Quote 99, quote $100. Dionysian clarified. Quote 1201. I clutched the crystal, sensing its burden, tangible and transcendent alike, the concluding message from an entity shifting from mortal to divine, the final purely human reflections of humanity's Lord prior to his evolution advancing irretrievably. "How do I engage it?" I inquired. Drago indicated a receptacle embedded in the adjacent wall next to the scryer cogitator. "It's ready." With awe verging on devotion, even given my recent insight into the Emperor's authentic essence, I inserted the crystal into the apparatus. The mechanism activated with a low hum, emitting not text or visuals, but an immediate psychic imprint. The Emperor's consciousness interfacing with mine over 10 millennia. Not the fragmented presence I'd seen under the palace, not the divine construct of imperial creed. The individual, the mortal who had forged Terra's unity and propelled humanity skyward. His psychic tone rang firm, lucid, untouched by eras or alteration. "10th witness bearer, you perceive me currently in my interim state, split between my former self and my emerging form. Understand that this split is essential. Ascension demands mastery of both tangible and intangible realms. I can't shepherd humanity while staying entirely corporeal, nor defend it as a mere warp presence." The psychic tone halted, as though collecting its essence. Even in this archive, the Emperor's intellect overwhelmed with its intricacy and might. Quote 105, "Visions paired with the message. The Emperor's scheme playing out over countless ages, the intentional yielding of his mortal body not as a loss but a precise maneuver. The golden throne, serving not just as sustenance for life, but a cocoon, the devotion from trillions of people, not squandered force, but precisely guided energy aimed at a targeted metamorphosis instead of haphazard divinity. Upon the grand shift's conclusion, I shall arise as neither mortal nor deity in the usual sense, an entity bridging both worlds, able to operate within them at once. Mankind's initial fully advanced state, the model for the evolution the race requires to endure assaults from material and spiritual foes alike. Additional visions appeared, a tomorrow where humankind progressed in parallel ways, untainted by disorder, but rising above the constraints that allowed disorder to thrive. Entities blending substance and essence, form and spirit in seamless unity rather than endless strife. Yet this destiny hangs in the balance. My evolution might falter. The equilibrium could tip into decay instead of elevation. The strength I've gathered from mortal belief might scatter pointlessly into the ether, or far graver, get seized by malevolent entities and wielded against the very souls it sought to shield. The psychic tone sharpened, intensifying with purpose. For this reason, you were forged, 10th Guardian. You, along with the ones you'll choose and train. The monumental shift nears its peak. At that moment, mankind must stand prepared. Leaders need to grasp the unfolding events. They cannot react with dread or denial, but embrace and adjust. The Imperium has to advance with its sovereign, or both will fall amid the impending tempest. Concluding directives came next, identities and sites, figures across the Imperium who prior guardians had quietly groomed, plus others primed by nature or situation to accept reality. A schedule for disclosure meticulously timed to align with the Emperor's metamorphosis endgame. 108 years, the tone affirmed. That's the span left until the cocoon bursts. Employ it shrewdly, Guardian, as what breaks free when the Golden Throne ceases will shape mankind's destiny forevermore. The vision faded, the crystal dimming within the device. I remained rooted, my thoughts reeling from the influx. Beyond mere data, it was a mission. Sharper and more resolute than any directive from my 10,000 years as a custodian. The Emperor lived, not a husk propped by devices and piety, not a powerless casualty of the arch-rebel's ultimate strike. He was changing, advancing, forging an entity without precedent in galactic annals. And he had anticipated this juncture, this edge of revolution, from his entombment's dawn. "Now you see," remarked Dionysian, noting my face, "the reason truth guardians persist, why belief alone won't carry mankind through the trials ahead." I inclined my head, words failing to capture the insight bestowed. The vastness of the Emperor's blueprint, spanning 10 millennia, plotting every phase toward a culmination beyond mortal creed or ingenuity. One query lingers, intoned Drago, his tone grave even via his helm's vocalizer. Does this mark mankind's redemption? Or has the Emperor, in prolonged seclusion, devised a rationale for yielding to the very powers he long resisted? Even the Grey Knights lack absolute assurance. Assurance may not be essential, I countered, voice steadying. What counts isn't the destination, but the path. The Emperor advances. Mankind must follow suit. The Imperium as well. And that's precisely why you were selected, added Dionysian with near approval. Atheon, you grasp that truth often discomforts yet remains vital. Drago motioned to the chamber's doorway. Much to confer with your fellow guardians, a plan to devise. I'll return in 3 days for your outlined strategy. Then he withdrew, abandoning the 5 truth guardians to the venerable room. We clustered by the silent augur machine, each immersed in reflection over the disclosures. 108 years, the woman uttered, shattering the quiet. A mere instant on imperial chronometers. Yet sufficient, countered the elder, provided we proceed with intent and precision. Dionysian turned to me. You've absorbed the Emperor's closing orders. Zahn, you possess the identities, the schedule. As the 10th Guardian, closing the loop, command of our fellowship devolves to you. What path do you propose? The burden of that duty pressed down, weightier than my custodian plate. The Imperium's future, perchance mankind's very survival, hinged on choices I'd render in the years ahead. We partition the duties, I declared, the scheme crystallizing as I voiced it. Each Guardian oversees designated regions and contacts. We synchronize our disclosures. We prioritize the dissemination to those in the greatest immediate need, expanding outward in expanding layers of comprehension. I addressed Dionysian next. As the one who has served the longest, your knowledge of the prior custodian's endeavors is priceless. You will stay on Titan, upholding our ties to the Grey Knights and overseeing our operations throughout the Imperium. He inclined his head, embracing the role without hesitation. The remainder of us will scatter, I went on. One to the Inquisition, one to the Adeptus Mechanicus, one to the Imperial Guard's High Command. I shall handle the Space Marine chapters and the Adeptus Administratum. We choose our inheritors from those we deem most open to the reality, not from guardians alone. With the 10th witness, the tradition shifts. Now, anyone capable of enduring the truth can act as its guardian. The other custodians agreed, recognizing the wisdom in this method. The era of hidden safeguarding was over. The moment had arrived for measured sharing. And the core message? The woman inquired. Which aspects of the truth do we disclose, and to what extent? I pondered her query thoughtfully. Unveiling the complete reality of the Emperor's metamorphosis would shatter most psyches, even among the prepared. Revelations must come in levels, adjusted to each listener's ability to grasp them. We start with the Emperor's intent, not his appearance. I resolved to frame his seeming demise as a tactical retreat, an essential step in defending mankind. We depict the Golden Throne not merely as sustenance for life, but as a chrysalis. We discuss emergence over decay, ascension over perdition. For those prepared for more profound insights, we introduce the dual essence, the equilibrium of the physical and the ethereal. We clarify that the Imperium's veneration honors neither the mortal who once walked nor the deity they envision, but an entity in flux between forms, an entity evolving rather than fixed. Dionysian signified his ascent, then raised the ultimate culmination, the profound transformation. What shall we convey about humanity's fate once the Golden Throne ultimately ceases? I summoned the psychic visions the Emperor had imparted. The prospect of mankind advanced past its present bounds, untouched by chaos's taint or bound by corporeal limits, into something novel, unparalleled in galactic annals. We informed them that humanity teeters on the edge of its forthcoming evolution. I stated that whatever the Emperor achieves, mankind might pursue, not via decay or alteration, but by surpassing the divides of flesh and spirit, substance and force. A merging of form and essence, vessel and vitality, yielding a being equipped to confront the star's terrors as an equal. They will brand it heresy, the woman cautioned. Even the most receptive to fresh perspectives will grapple with these ideas. In that case, we must guide them past narrow notions like orthodoxy and heresy, I responded. The Emperor himself eclipses such boundaries. So too must those steering mankind through the grand shift. Our debate persisted across the vessel's nocturnal phase, honing the tactics, assigning precise objectives, and setting guidelines for liaison and synergy. When Drago reappeared 3 days hence, we had crafted a thorough blueprint for propagating the truth among the Imperium's uppermost ranks. The Supreme Grandmaster attended quietly as I detailed our strategy. Upon my conclusion, he doffed his helmet for the initial occasion, exposing features etched by years yet fierce in resolve. You realize that not everyone will embrace this reality, he observed. Certain factions will deem it the gravest apostasy. They will resist you using every tool in their arsenal. We anticipate opposition, I conceded, most vehemently from the ecclesiarchy, but also from rigid sects in the Inquisition and select Space Marine chapters. We have pinpointed the probable deniers and strategized in response. Strategized in what manner? Drago probed, his gaze sharpening faintly. The Grey Knights cannot endorse aggression toward devoted Imperium agents, regardless of their flawed perceptions. Not aggression, I reassured him. Segregation. Restraint. We will maneuver those unable to accept the reality into roles where they pose no barrier to the vital readiness. Their devotion to the Emperor as divine has bolstered humanity for 10 millennia. We honor it, yet it must not hinder mankind's adjustment to the impending era. Drago mulled this over at length before assenting. The Grey Knights shall uphold impartiality in this affair, as we have across 10,000 years. We combat mankind's outer foes, not its inner rifts. Yet we shall persist in offering refuge to the truth-bearers and protecting the lore you have gathered. That suffices, I replied, along with your silence as we commence. You possess both, Drago confirmed. Now, I suspect your vessel is ready for the voyage. The road before us stretches far, both in miles and in meaning. We departed Titan come morning, the murmur of revelation gliding once again via the warp en route to our initial waypoint among countless others. Our routes would split at the Mandeville nexus of the Sol system, every carrier charting a path to their designated region within the Imperium. I wouldn't cross paths with my companion bearers for years on end, perhaps never. Our efforts would press on independently, yet aligned, directed by the Emperor's parting directives and our collective grasp of the monumental shift awaiting. While positioned on the viewing platform, observing Saturn fade into the distance astern, I contemplated the profound shift within me, from custodian to bearer of truth, from protector of a dimly grasped artifact to messenger of an unfathomable metamorphosis. I'd forfeited plenty: my fellowship, my convictions, my station in the Imperium's unyielding order. Yet, I'd acquired far more: resolve, insight, the honor of influencing mankind's reaction to the gravest occurrence since the Emperor's rise to the Golden Throne. I brushed against the contorted aquila fastened within my cloak, sensing its heft upon my torso. It bore no resemblance to the load it once appeared upon Valoris's initial offering. Instead, it served as a token of the reality I bore and the duty I'd embraced. The Golden Throne weeps. The divine entity awakens. The Imperium transforms, and I, Atheon, former shield captain of the Adeptus Custodes, present truth-bearer, shall aid in steering humanity amid the impending tempest, not through belief nor deception, but via verity, dreadful yet awe-inspiring, ruinous yet inspiring. The verity concerning the Emperor's authentic essence and mankind's final fate, 108 years before the Grand Alteration. The mission commences immediately.